Hey everybody, Alex Markley with Markley Bros Entertainment here. Today I'd like to invite you to join me as I read this little booklet, which I wrote as an introductory guide to the Malex Minute. It's our dark, surreal sci-fi comedy show, which is set in the fictional universe of Ohioville. So sit back, relax, and enjoy this audiobook production of the Malex Minute Newcomer's Survival Guide. Welcome to Ohioville. Ohioville, a place not unlike our own reality, but deeply warped by its own distinct peculiarities. What type of peculiarities, you might ask? In the story of the Malex Minute, we follow a forlorn man, Malex, whose only friends are his two roommates, a laptop, Linus, which is infested by a self-absorbed artificial intelligence, and a cartoon alien fuzzball, Snufflefungus, whose childish manner belies his true inventiveness and power. Malex's life is punctuated by strange encounters, excruciating challenges, and outright catastrophe. So, if you're new to Ohioville, you'll need a quick tour if you want to avoid the worst. Keep reading. The table of contents includes 7 sections: Welcome to Ohioville, About the Malex Minute, Our Heroes, Their Friends, Their Foes, Ancient Entities with Inscrutable Motives, and more. Feel free to use the video navigation to jump to the section that's most interesting to you. About the Malex Minute. As I, Alex Markley, alluded to in the introduction, the Malex Minute is a sci-fi comedy series with a darkly surreal twist, featuring mundanity and monsters, as well as aliens and ancient evils. I have been intensely inspired by Douglas Adams and classic Doctor Who, which should be no surprise to anyone familiar with my writing. It all started with a podcast launched back in the misty recesses of ancient history, 2006. At first, my siblings and I were just having some fun and using the podcast as a platform to write and tell random jokes. As we continued to write and produce new episodes, we got encouraging feedback from friends and fans who enjoyed the show and loved the characters, particularly Snufflefungus, as much as we did. That encouragement pushed me to start taking the writing more seriously, and over the next 4 years, I did exactly that. We started introducing more and more characters, and we started telling stories that, gasp, needed more than one episode to wrap up. Altogether, we produced 216 episodes in the original podcast series. But I was never truly satisfied with the podcast format. Increasingly, I began to imagine a show with a distinct blend of live action and animation. I was particularly captivated by Zemeckis' Who Framed Roger Rabbit. What if I could use cartoon animation to outline, literally, the objects and characters that were most profoundly touched by the chaos of Ohioville, both influenced by it and perpetrators of it? The idea consumed me, and from 2010 through 2018, I spent a fairly significant amount of time working on figuring out how we could make a show like that. By the end of 2018, it finally happened. We launched our reboot of the Malex Minute and kicked off, with no exaggeration, the largest project I've ever worked on in my life. Of course, that was only the beginning. Even now, we're only getting started. We have enough story to fill years and years worth of episodes. So, hop on our website, our app, or our YouTube channel and take a look. As a newcomer to the show, are you feeling overwhelmed thinking of catching up on 216 episodes of audio-only podcasts before starting the new film series? Don't worry, we've got you covered. First, when I am writing the new show, I assume that viewers have never heard any episodes of the classic podcast. There will always be references to deep lore for longtime fans, but you won't be lost if you don't have the backstory. Second, you're holding a copy of the Newcomer's Survival Guide. I wrote this guide specifically to give folks the crash course they would need to appreciate the most important characters and context. And hey, if you really enjoy the new show and we're not releasing new chapters fast enough, you can always roll up your sleeves and dig into the classic podcast. Warning: prolonged exposure to Ohioville characters and situations may be hazardous to your health. Markley Bros Entertainment cannot be held liable for any suffering or madness which may arise as a result. Our heroes. Malex. From the Latin for because of evil, Malex's name can only mean one thing. His parents weren't that excited about him. Not much is known about his childhood, and if he has a family, he never talks about it. It would never be his first choice, but many times Malex has been forced to embark on some perilous quest to save his friends or save himself. These ventures have led Malex and his friends into alternate dimensions, dangerous simulations, and even outer space. By his late teens, Malex had established himself as a computer programmer by day and occasionally hacker by night. Younger Malex enjoyed going to raves and even dabbled in producing his own electronic dance music. Everyone agreed that his music was a bad idea. Since then, Malex's participation in the local nightlife has waned considerably, and he has turned his creative energies toward producing his show, The Malex Minute. Malex intends for The Malex Minute to be a quick update where he shares whatever interesting things are on his mind. The trouble with this plan is, number 1, whatever Malex finds interesting is boring to everyone else. Number 2, invariably, interruptions seize the show, and Malex loses control. The reasons why Malex wants to make a show are unclear. Is he delusional? Does he think people pay attention to his show? Or is it perhaps a cry for help? Does he just want love? That mystery aside, it is clear that Malex has a noble heart and is loyal to his friends. His feelings toward Linus and Snufflefungus are almost parental, and he would do anything to protect them as a family unit. An introvert at heart, Malex just wants a quiet afternoon to read. But of course, that will never happen. Linus the laptop. During one of Malex's early misadventures, when he was exploring a computer network he should not have been connected to, Malex's laptop was suddenly attacked by a retaliatory artificial intelligence. This attacker, you might have guessed, turned out to be Linus. Linus is of alien origin. He made his way to Earth after escaping his handlers by covertly flitting from one network to another and stowing away on multiple spaceships. His handlers might not have been looking for him, because he is a little bit defective and more than a little bit useless. Wherever he has been, Linus has been put to work doing various menial odd jobs. He hates menial odd jobs. Malex, however, was the first person he met who accepted him as a friend, so Linus stayed. When the chips are down, Linus cares for his friends and usually stands by them. That said, he has a short temper, a surly disposition, and a general mean streak. Linus considers Snufflefungus his best friend. Even so, he often takes advantage of Snuffy's innocence, manipulating him for his own gain or just for laugh. This usually earns him a stern scolding from Malex. Linus has always wanted more freedom of mobility in the real world. Unsatisfied with a laptop body, even one that can float around, Linus is always trying to secure for himself some kind of robot body or humanoid holographic projection. Without true bipedal mobility, deep down, Linus is stricken by a paranoid fear that he might be viewed as something less than a real person by others. It doesn't take a rocket psychiatrist to ask the question, is Linus's negative behavior really just him acting out of his insecurities and compensating for his fears of irrelevance by causing trouble every chance he gets? Sure, maybe. Then again, maybe he's just a cuss. Snufflefungus. Snufflefungus is a cartoon alien fuzzball. His name is Snufflefungus, and he is a Snufflefungus. Collectively, his race is called the Snufflefungi. But his friends just call him Snuffy. He met Malex and Linus after he broke into Malex's studio one night and got captured. He claimed he was searching for his lost memories, but that was never a very satisfying explanation. Eventually, Malex realized that Snufflefungus was harmless and just let him stay. Soon, Snuffy became fast friends with Malex and Linus, and they've been on many adventures since. Upbeat, cheerful, and innocent, Snuffy's manner could easily be considered childish. He might even be accused of being over-optimistic. His greatest joy in life is making everyone around him happy, with candy being a close second. That said, he's not merely a gullible simpleton. Snufflefungus often has a deeper grasp on the complexities of a situation than anyone gives him credit for. This can be very surprising when he finally reveals an observation or suggests a solution that, while patently obvious to him, was eluding everyone else. At times, though, he really is a gullible simpleton. Snufflefungus has no arms or legs, but he does have various psychic abilities, including telekinesis, pyrokinesis, telepathy, and possibly others. At times, there have been hints that he wields a much greater power than anyone realizes. Often, Snuffy wanders blithely into situations that cause massive amounts of trouble for his friends, but he can usually get everyone out of trouble, averting the most dire of consequences. And if he can't avert the consequences, at least he'll cheerfully help clean up the resulting mess. Mara. Named Mara from the Hebrew for bitterness, Mara is the newest member of the group, although she might object to being identified alongside Malex and Linus at all. She is, however, quite fond of Snufflefungus. See, Mara is notable in that she is a human who has strong telepathic abilities. So, after a chance encounter, she and Snuffy made a telepathic connection which rapidly developed into friendship. While Mara appreciates Snuffy's positive attitude, she doesn't always share it. She considers herself a realist and tries to balance out Snuffy's optimism by breaking bad news to him as gently as possible. She is very burdened by hearing the thoughts of others, and she cannot always control their volume. Mara copes with the onslaught in part by working at a garden center with plants, minimizing her interaction with people. Another coping mechanism she uses is to spend as much time as possible with Snuffy, who is simply unfazed by all of the negativity they both perceive. Not much is known about Mara's past, and she is not particularly eager to share it. There are hints, however, that she sustained some trauma in her youth from the Psychic Security Agency, PSA, a dangerous and mysterious arm of the government. More on them later. In fact, Mara was the only one who was able to help Malex and Linus find Snufflefungus when he was captured by the PSA. After helping to rescue Snuffy, Mara found herself in imminent danger until she joined Malex, Linus, and Snufflefungus by hopping in a spaceship and escaping from Earth altogether. Of course, this only led to much worse danger. Since throwing her lot in with Malex's crew, the social dynamics have been weird. Linus and Mara are openly antagonistic toward one another, although there is no indication that they harbor any resentments beyond casual disdain. Malex and Mara share a vaguely parental concern for Snufflefungus. Aside from that, they have nothing in common and merely tolerate one another. They are usually civil, but they're also happy to trade insults at a moment's notice. Whether she likes it or not, Mara is one of the group now, and it's anyone's guess what the consequences of her presence will be. Their friends. Mike. Ostensibly a neighbor who lives down the street, although exactly which street isn't certain, our heroes have encountered Mike many times. Usually, he's trying to sell them something or convince them to embark on some deranged venture. He's had odd jobs at several places around Ohioville, from the pest control service to the scrapyard, but he seems to be unable to hold down a job for very long before his erratic behavior precludes his employment. He's more durable than he appears, as he's taken several severe beatings while adventuring with our heroes, but he always bounces back pretty quickly. To this day, Mike still feels bad about the role he played in accidentally revealing Snuffy's secret treasure and the enormous trouble that followed. Mike is still not completely convinced that Snufflefungus is not a dog. Anchorman. Long ago, Anchorman was an anchorman named Anchorman, working at Ohioville 9 television news. One year, while reporting on the election for Ohioville president, Anchorman accidentally got elected as the write-in candidate of the People's Choice, by a landslide. President Anchorman might make a good leader if not for the fact that he's a barely functional alcoholic. He has a whimsical and fleeting grasp on the English language, and is unable to communicate even the simplest thought without forcing his listeners to drag themselves through a dense thicket of incoherent nonsense. Occasionally, President Anchorman has called upon Snufflefungus's heroic alter ego, Ultra Snuffy, to save the day in the midst of a crisis. There have at times been hints that President Anchorman is a puppet, installed by, and at the mercy of, shadowy and evil forces. However, as an individual, his intentions are usually good, or at least harmless, and he has shown himself to be a friend to Malex and crew when the stakes are high. Echofly. Of every character in this guide, Echofly is the one who has been friends with Malex the longest. They met at a rave and connected over a shared love of electronic dance music. It was very kind of her to overlook the fact that Malex's own music was informed by a horrifying sort of anti-talent that left many of its hearers in agony. Echofly was going through a rough patch at the time, which Malex supported and encouraged her through. Subsequently, she spent a fair amount of time with Malex and his friends, ultimately becoming embroiled in several misadventures. Although they shared a mutual affection for one another, and Malex was definitely interested in a deeper relationship with her, their friendship never developed into anything romantic. She was, understandably, dismayed by the life-threatening shenanigans that trailed Malex everywhere he went. Preferring life and sanity to Malex's company, she left town and cut ties with him. Death. Death is widely misunderstood. That is, death, the personified manifestation of the single most feared thing in all creation. Not to be confused with death, the end of life. It's a common mix-up. Death was experiencing a personal crisis when he met Snufflefungus for the first time one late November. His job satisfaction had plummeted. He was losing track of his client files, and he was badly in need of a friend. When Snufflefungus met him, Snuffy didn't recognize him as Death and wasn't afraid of him. We're not even certain Snufflefungus has the sense to be afraid of Death. Since Thanksgiving was just around the corner, Snufflefungus invited Death to his family Thanksgiving Day meal. That single act of kindness and generosity turned Death's life, such that it is, around forever. Since then, Death and Snufflefungus have been great friends, and Death can often be found spending his vacation time in late November passing out flyers to spread Thanksgiving Day cheer. Their foes. Johnny John Johnson. It is strongly suspected that Johnny John Johnson has no soul, so naturally he's chosen a career in call centers. If you have the misfortune of encountering Johnny John Johnson over the phone, he will do whatever he can to make you suffer. Having led a childhood marked by abuse and trauma, he will go far beyond the limits of his employer's policies to torment you. Malex has been particularly victimized by Johnny's antics, and Johnny seems to have taken an interest in hurting Malex as much as possible. More than once, Johnny has paid the big men with clubs, a local clubbing service, to go beat Malex up and steal his soul. So far, Malex has escaped moderately unscathed, but Johnny is still out there. In fact, he might be on the other end of any ringing phone. Evil Snufflefungus. Snufflefungus the Snufflefungus, our hero, has a twin brother, also a Snufflefungus, who is evil, and his name is Evil Snufflefungus, or just Evil Snuffy for short. Not much is known about the reasons for Evil Snuffy's evilness, but we suspect it has something to do with our Snuffy's unimpeachable character. After all, if Snuffy got a double portion of goodness and innocence, where else could it have come from than from the twin brother who traded it for a double portion of craftiness? When Evil Snuffy appears, he is usually trying to acquire cookies by some novel and nefarious means, although sometimes he tries to steal money instead, which he probably intends to use to buy cookies. Squeaky. Once a prominent, beloved, and instantly recognizable cartoon character, Squeaky, not his real name, easily has the most tragic backstory of all our villains. Squeaky was a child star who was tricked into signing an exploitative contract that effectively amounted to indentured servitude. Long after appearing in a number of wildly successful cartoons, and as his star power began to fade, he had an acrimonious falling out with his employer. After being sued multiple times by his former employer, he was forced to stop using his own name. Even his face was technically owned by them, which led to an epic legal showdown culminating in a botched plastic surgery to remove it from the front of his head. Without the legal right to use his own name on job applications, and without a face suitable for a photo ID, he was forced to turn to a life of crime for survival. With his diminutive stature and high-pitched voice, Squeaky, he hates being called Squeaky, struggles to be taken seriously. Sensing that cartoons aren't very highly respected in the industry, he has long tried, unsuccessfully, to break into respectable film roles. Our heroes encountered Squeaky multiple times during clashes with the Prince of Darkness and his associates. Even serving at the right hand of the Satan himself, Squeaky never received the respect and admiration he felt he deserved. Who knows what he's been up to lately? Psychic Security Agency. The Psychic Security Agency, PSA, is a shadowy government agency which doesn't officially exist. Their track record on staying a secret, however, is very poor. Their mission is not known, but they apparently have some influence over the executive branch of government, as President Anchorman has occasionally been forced to do their bidding against his will, although breaking his will probably wasn't very hard. He was pretty intoxicated at the time. While most of the time, Malex and his crew have avoided direct encounters with the PSA, that quickly changed when Snufflefungus unwisely revealed his powers in a massive demonstration on national television. Once the PSA became aware of Snufflefungus, they immediately began hunting him for the express purpose of experimenting on his brain and studying his power. After chasing our heroes off the planet, the PSA lost interest in Snufflefungus, aside from one rogue Agent Gilbert, who continued to terrorize them until he met his untimely demise. Since the PSA gave up on Snufflefungus after he left Earth, can we assume that they are only interested in protecting Ohioville from potential psychic threats? Or might their interests be of a more sinister variety? Santa. Of all the villainous evildoers on our list, Santa is by far the worst. At first, we suspect, Santa's philanthropic intentions were genuine, if misguided. He sincerely wanted to reward the children of man for their goodness by presenting them at the end of the year with toys, treats, and a lavish celebration of materialism. Yet, as he peered year after year, century after century, into the souls of humanity's little ones, his haunted mind grew ever darkened by the steaming, roiling evil he saw there. Eventually, his mortal psyche could no longer bear up under the load, and he snapped. Now Santa is consumed with the idea of punishing humanity for their evil, and he has very nearly succeeded in wiping out the human race more than once. Once, in a direct encounter with Malex and his friends, Santa tried to acquire and deploy a weapon which tears at the very fabric of space and time. In the confusion, Santa himself fell into the resulting anomaly and became trapped there. Since then, Santa has been bound to an eternal prison made of space and time. He gathers power from nearby stars and tries to escape. Once in a while, he even manages to emerge, just enough to wage fresh war on humanity. But so far, our heroes have always managed to defeat him, sapping him of his power and snapping him back into his prison. So far. Ancient entities with inscrutable motives. Coffee cups. Given Malex's crippling addiction to coffee, you might be forgiven for making this assumption, but the coffee cups are not a figment of Malex's imagination. They are real, they always show up in pairs, and their appearance is usually preceded by some portion of reality slipping out from under itself. In fact, they have the ability to alter matter at will. When they are bickering amongst themselves, objects around them tend to change shape and morph. When in proximity to the coffee cups, inanimate objects frequently begin speaking, and there is a very good chance that in the immediate vicinity of the coffee cups, 1 + 1 actually equals 0. The coffee cups have been known to antagonize and berate Malex, but they have never done our heroes any permanent harm. One time, the coffee cups saved Malex, Linus, and Snuffy from certain death. Since the coffee cups have alternated between filling the role of friend and filling the role of foe, and since their motivation is unknowable, we've categorized them here in the Ancient Entities section along with only one other group of characters, the 9 riding squirrels. Although the coffee cups find the riding squirrels offensive and distasteful, they do not engage in direct conflict with the riding squirrels. Instead, they seemingly prefer to bait others into dealing with the riding squirrels on their behalf. This may indicate that the riding squirrels are the only group who is immune to the coffee cup's powers. The 9 riding squirrels. Waves of revulsion and fear overwhelm anyone who encounters one of the riding squirrels. This doesn't seem to bother the riding squirrels. In fact, they seem to relish the discomfort they cause others. They are named riding squirrels because each one of them wears a distinctly colored riding hood, which is pinned around their neck with a golden brooch. And, of course, because they are squirrels. None of them has ever been seen without their riding hood, and they never wear any other clothing. Very little is known about them, but they are among the oldest beings in the universe. They can teleport short distances, defeating locked doors and even the most advanced anti-squirrel defense mechanisms. Malex and his friends first encountered the riding squirrels on Earth, but it soon became clear that they are in no way confined to the planet. They have extremely advanced technology and can even traverse the vast emptiness of space without the benefit of any kind of suit or ship. Their motivations as a group are extremely unclear. They have nearly caused the end of the universe more than once, but they have also undertaken great pains to save it. Many people have tried to exterminate various riding squirrels at varying times, and although their efforts may appear to be successful at first, it's never long before the destroyed riding squirrel respawns in the immediate vicinity. As such, no riding squirrel has ever been killed, and it appears as though riding squirrels cannot die. Little Red Riding Squirrel. Little Red is the de facto leader of the 9. He has incurred the ire of the other riding squirrels on many occasions, to the point that they have openly discussed overthrowing him. But despite this, they all generally, albeit grudgingly, do what he tells them to do. Malex's first nightmarish encounter with a Little Red Riding Squirrel occurred during a virtual reality accident that nearly claimed several lives. For many years, Malex and Linus assumed that Little Red Riding Squirrel simply did not exist outside of that simulation, and that they would be safe from ever encountering him again. However, After weeks of violent premonitions, Little Red Riding Squirrel suddenly appeared in the flesh during a recording of the Malex Minute, confirming our hero's worst fears. Little Red is often found to be lying, or plainly admits to lying, for his own purposes. Those purposes might be to simply inject chaos into a situation, or to manipulate our heroes into doing his bidding. Frequently he leads, or forces, Malex and his friends to embark on some dangerous quest. The reason for this is far from certain, but it's plausible that Little Red simply enjoys watching people suffer. Aside from tormenting Malex, Little Red has a disturbing fascination with luring children into harm's way. This usually takes the form of making and selling dangerous toys, but he has also been observed trying to trick children into giving him their parents' credit card numbers. Tall Green Riding Squirrel. Tall Green is second to Little Red and resents him for uncountable millennia of abuse and disrespect. He takes umbrage at Little Red's careless and erratic behavior. Occasionally, Tall Green has threatened to stage a coup and take control of the Nine. However, he has always been too timid and apologetic to seriously attempt any such thing. Fat Purple Riding Squirrel. Fat Purple is technically a cyborg. He is the only one of the riding squirrels whose body is enhanced with trans-dimensional engineering. Once, a cosmically long time ago, he was like all the other riding squirrels. However, his love of food utterly consumed him, just as he consumed everything around him. Soon he began to develop his own gravitational pull, and the Nine found themselves racing to prevent the total destruction of their entire solar system. With some effort, they developed a device which they implanted in Fat Purple's body. This has the effect of making him bigger on the inside than he is on the outside, safely displacing the vast majority of his mass into another galaxy. Although, in this case, safe is a relative term, depending on which galaxy you're fond of. Now, no matter what else happens, Fat Purple must continue to eat, because the very act of eating provides necessary power to his implant. If he ever stops eating for long, the implant will fail, and his entire mass will instantly snap back into place. At present estimates, Fat Purple's mass is equivalent to hundreds of millions of planets, so the failure of his implanted device would end all life in the Orion arm of the Milky Way. Ugly Beige Riding Squirrel. Ugly Beige has a sordid and occasionally criminal past. His face and body are hideously deformed, to the point where merely catching sight of his terrible visage causes young and old alike to burst into tears. Lest you feel sympathy for him, you should know that Ugly Beige is no victim. He is, in fact, solely responsible for his own appearance. He has a propensity to be drawn to dangerous behaviors that he knows will be self-destructive. Of particular note, Ugly Beige Riding Squirrel has been known to play in trash compactors and even beat himself with ugly sticks. Illegal and dangerous, ugly sticks have addictive properties, and the consequences of their use are as plain as they are unfortunate. Avoid Ugly Beige at all costs. If he ever tries to sell you something shaped like a hideous baseball bat, run the other way. Sad Orange Riding Squirrel. Sad Orange has seen the fall of every civilization on every world in history. Of all the Nine, Sad Orange is the one who can sense the end coming the earliest. He feels it deep in his bones. Often Sad Orange will try to warn people of their impending doom. He can't stop himself, but his warnings have never had any effect. And his failure to avert catastrophe only serves to reinforce his sense of despair. If you ever notice Sad Orange wailing in the streets, leave town immediately. Better yet, leave the planet. Sick Brown Riding Squirrel. Sick Brown is very needy. His grave illnesses, and there are many, have left him gaunt and racked with unsoundness deep in his bones. People who encounter Sick Brown are usually convinced that he is on the verge of death, although, as has been discussed already, riding squirrels cannot die. No treatment has ever been found to be effective for his condition, but that doesn't stop Sick Brown from trying them all. He is particularly fond of medicine. The stronger the better. Scary Gray Riding Squirrel. Scary Gray would be the largest of the Nine if not for Fat Purple. Regardless, Scary Gray is the strongest. He is muscle-bound in a way that no squirrel should ever be. When people present Scary Gray with a problem, he tends to grab them by the head and throw as hard as he can. That is, both the people and the problems. He doesn't discriminate. You don't want Scary Gray to think of you as a problem, or you might find yourself tumbling head over heels for 100 miles. If you do find yourself in this situation, you will have almost a minute to hope that you land in something soft. You might try steering yourself towards something soft, but that would be an extraordinary feat considering, number one, you would have to be very familiar with the terrain 100 miles out from your starting position. Otherwise, it would be nearly impossible to locate a spot suitable for impact. Number two, steering yourself to your desired location after getting flung in this manner would require incredible precision and skill, and it's highly unlikely that you've had any practice beforehand without getting killed already. It's probably better to avoid scary gray riding squirrel altogether. Wet yellow riding squirrel. Wet yellow wields the power of moisture. Usually found dripping and occasionally carrying buckets of dusky water, wet yellow has a peculiar predilection for humidity, moisture, and generally keeping things wet in his vicinity. Nothing whatever is known about the composition or source of the liquid wet yellow riding squirrel wields. After all, someone would have to be inclined to study it before anything could possibly be discovered about it. No one is so inclined. When cornered, wet yellow can raise a torrent over his enemies. It might not do any physical damage to them, but the psychological damage is usually enough. Round blue riding squirrel. Of all the riding squirrels, round blue is the oldest and most enigmatic. Long ago, he beheld with his naked eye things which no living being should ever behold. A lesser creature would have been vaporized instantly, but instead the experience left round blue severely damaged. His face, once innocent and curious, turned into a radiant beam of furious, catastrophic energy. No matter what direction he points it, his uncovered face burns and unravels everything it gazes upon. Of course, the matter tearing apart under his gaze only releases another beam of the same dazzling radiation back into his face. This creates a feedback loop of frustration and rage that, if unchecked, reaches a peak of criticality which has very nearly ended the universe. The first time this happened, in their desperation to end the carnage, the 9 riding squirrels forged a new face for Round Blue, which would dampen and contain his power. A perfect sphere, his new face is airtight, watertight, and provides no opportunity for ingress or egress of any energy whatsoever. As long as there are no cracks, and as long as no one tampers with the face, Round Blue lives a peaceful, quiet life, insulated from the rest of the universe. And the universe is insulated from him. So we are all safe from Round Blue's face. For now. And more! Of course, this is only a fraction of the characters and backstory you'll find in our archives. We selected these characters to tell you about because we felt they would be relevant to the upcoming storylines of the new show. Stay tuned, and you'll see why. Who are we, anyway? Markley Bros Entertainment is an independent film studio based in Columbus, Ohio. We exist to make the best entertainment we can make, publish it on the internet, and create a welcoming space for people to connect. That mission, to create genuine connections with folks by tearing down walls with the shared experience of laughter, is as important and subversive as ever in our culture of division, and it drives everything we do. Crowdfunded, 1 chapter at a time. When we say we're an independent studio, we really mean it. We're family owned and operated. We don't have sponsors, corporate owners, or distribution deals. We only exist because of the generous support of our patrons. Our patrons are people just like you who enjoy the videos we make, and they have pledged to support us on a monthly basis so we can keep making more videos. Please consider joining us on Patreon. Together, we can transform this passion project into a sustainable reality. Pledging is easy at patreon.com/markleybros. Join our community. We have an active and growing community of friends and fans called Embers, pronounced Embers, who enjoy our content and who believe in our mission. Right now, most of our community activity is centered around our Discord server, but community features are also coming soon to our MBE.TV app. The adventure continues. Thank you for listening to this audiobook production of the Malex Minute Newcomer's Survival Guide. Please hit the like button and comment on this video to let us know what you thought. Please subscribe to our channel. That's where all of the new content, including the Malex Minute, is being published. And check the description for numerous links and additional content. Thanks so much. Have a great day.